Hello, everyone. Thank you for being present in my presentation and the other colleagues also. So, as Dr. Salama has mentioned, I'm going to talk about the methodologies of Agile as a concept, and also compare it and contrast it with other methodologies that are out there. So, the agenda would be somehow an overview at the beginning about Agile, based on a book review that I did on, which is Agile, Managing Projects Agile Way. And then moving to the traditional, then comparing the four, I will give you like 4 methodologies within the Agile umbrella, and then advantages, disadvantages, and finish with some industry examples. So the Agile, as we have been hearing the whole day, it's like being flexible and being able to do things quickly and do it in order to meet the requirements. So based on the book of John Goodpasture, he's defining it like, which is in terms of increments and iterations. It's different timing that you need to spend on each iteration, and then check this one if it is good, and then deliver it, and then check another one, and then deliver it. So it's a small group of people working collaboratively and collectively in order to deliver these increments. And this brings up the main characteristic of Agile, which are change, adaptation, and flexibility. So these are the 3 main characteristics of Agile. So when it is used, it's not all time, like we can say, okay, Agile is the best, all time is working. So based on my research, it's like if we have a continuous change, and for example, the customer comes to you and tells you, okay, I want to develop a project which is just build a building. And then at the end of the day, when you build the building, he doesn't really know what he wants. So he's uncertain, like he tells you, no, this is not the shape, or so what he wants, there's a big room of uncertainty in there. The other one is like urgency. There is a sense of urgency. A customer comes to you and tells you, oh, I need this project in like 3 months, or like, while normally this project takes at least 6 months or 1 year. So in such type of projects, so probably would be better to go with agility, to be flexible. And the third one, which is high complexity. If a project is very complex, and probably there are a lot of concepts in there that needs to be broken down into increments, then Agile is doing it properly for that. And the last one is uniqueness. If, for example, a team has been like making projects, but the customer bring in a new project for them, they are not familiar with such type of projects. For those type of people managing these projects, so they should rather go with this try and error in terms of iterations than just go with the whole delivery of the projects at the end. But this doesn't mean that if the team has already been working on a project for several years and have deep experience in it, so probably they don't need Agile because they are very fluent with it. So the traditional model is the waterfall model, which means it's a cascading stages model in which we have from the feasibility until the support, which is the post-delivery of the projects. And then, for example, we suppose that we are going one stage to the other in one typical projects, and then we end up in a testing phase. And then in the testing phase, we end up with the testing which is not really what we want, not fitting the requirements. And then you need to go back to the design because you discovered that's where the problem is. Doing back this iteration, it's very costly, and it's not feasible in the traditional way. That's why this traditional, it's very linear, and it's not really very efficient in terms of making errors. On the other side, we have Agile. And this is presenting Scrum as an example of methodology in Agile. And here we have the product backlog. Product backlog is just the set of requirements the product owner comes with. He wants to build a building, or he wants to make a software. So these all things are representing the product backlog. Then it's given to the Scrum Master, who makes the sprint planning. And this sprint planning, through this planning, he's making sprint backlogs to separate. He's making separate small bunch from this whole requirements. And then he's give it to the team who makes like sprints, and then it goes like for every sprint backlog and then deliver it at the end so that he will have the full product by the end. And it will also get the use of the burn charts, burn down charts, which is like a visualization of the work progress, if like where are we in the work so far, if it is completed or not yet. And also this is part of the stand-up meetings in which they reflect on what they are doing today, what they did yesterday, and if they have any problems to be fixed. So Agile is more like flexible in terms of iteration. This is like a survey that is done, and they are asking people whether they agree with or strongly agree with Agile criteria over here. Lightweight, improves productivity, increase. While the other group of people working on traditional, they gave them the opposites, and they told them, do you disagree or strongly disagree with it? So we see that there is this, like people, for example, in high weight, for the heavy weights, for the traditional, people 2.1% only disagree that it is heavyweight, which means 8.9% over 10 degree, it says that they agree that it is heavyweights. And same with the Agile, for example. This just gives you a visualization. For the 4 methodologies that I want to talk about the Agile are the Scrum, which is exactly the one that I described just now. The extreme programming, which is a discipline approach, which is almost like Scrum, but it is like less prescriptive. And we have the Crystal. The Crystal methodology, it's more empathic methodology, because it has like this visualization of the scalability of the issues of the projects. And then we have the EVO, which is the PDCA, which is the build act cycle, which is almost built on the waterfall, but this one it's more like in a more iterative approach. So to compare this, I'm taking it into 3 dimensions: the people, process, and practices. And this is based on the book of Good Pasture. So he's given like the three methodologies: EVO, Scrum, XP, and Crystal. And he's given like the different components and their people. For example, here we have project manager, customer, user, team leader, team member, and other people. So these, for example, here we see the difference in project management just in terms of naming. For example, in the traditional, we have a project manager, while in Scrum, we have like a Scrum master, or we have, for example, coach in XP and EVO. So this just gives you a whole comparison between the different concepts. Same for processes. For processes here, he's putting, again, Good Pasture, the different applications and the processes, like rules, doctrine, communication, planning, and also the measurements. And also, again, he's comparing for the 4, and he's saying that each one has its own different aspects, but he's also, like, we can see that it's almost similar. All of them, they agree on iteration, and it is short time of iteration, which is like almost like 2 to 3 weeks only, not really more than 4 weeks, which is Scrum maximum timing. For the technology and practices, we have developing, testing, and closing. Again, they all reflect, they have reflective summaries, like at the end, in which they reflect on what the work done. And the testing is also done differently in each, but they are all somehow similar. So now I want to compare like Agile with the traditional, and I want to cover it in the 3 aspects, which is the customer, availability. In terms of Agile, we need the customer all time to be present with us, because this customer, he's the one to give us his feedback on each sprint backlog that we're going to deliver. And then based on this, we will make modifications. While in the traditional, we don't need the customer availability, because this customer, he will just give you the requirement at the beginning, and then by the end, you will just give him the results, whether take it or leave it. And for the scope in the Agile, it's very flexible. You don't really need it to be very defined, because you iterate. And again, you present, you get a requirement, you change it, you adapt it, and then you give it a final deliverable. And same goes with all the other aspects. So for the disadvantages that we say about Agile in general, it is like weak commitment to the scope and the cost. Like we don't have it. There is a weak commitment, and also it's testing is not independent. Difficult to scale the small design to the small teams, dynamic to bigger, and it's highly high reliability and mission critical. Requires strong verification, which is missing. For the advantages, we keep saying it's very flexible. It increases the productivity because it's you have this dynamic between the teams. It's early detection of errors because in every time you iterate, so you see your errors. It gives you, by the end, high quality software, and it allows the knowledge transfer between the team. So this is how it looks in industries. This is how it looks. It's a board full of visuals, stickers, and agreed visuals between the team. So here we have the product, the backlog, the product backlog, the status report, the Scrum board, and the additional tracking. And then in every time the team meets, they just change these stickers from one place to another based on the status of the whole projects. So Scrum has been used in different companies, and like, for example, Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, and all the people around here. So it's different companies. It's showing that it's not only for software development, as some people pretend. And it's also in different type of projects. And for example, mobile phones, network switching application. So it's not only limited to one sector. This is an example of IBM that I wanted to share with you this video, but I don't think it will be running because the internet problem. So this one, it just gives you like how the IBM, they wanted to implement Agile, the purpose of it, and how it's working around them. It's a very inspiring video that you can watch if you want at ease at home. So I want to conclude with one thing. Let me just use the board as well as the Agile people use the board. So the traditional, if the traditional is a triangle, which has a defined scope, and then we end up with the cost and the time. While the Agile, it's an upside down triangle in which we have a fixed cost and a fixed timing, and then we end up with whatever it is that project, which is the scope. So this is the main difference between Agile and other methodologies. So thank you.
Agile will impact the project during all these stages. The issue is that we are facing with traditional project management, that when there is any change, they are unable to deal with, which is affecting negatively the project during the construction, during the design stage, even during the explanation with the client himself. Agile, dealing with any change as a proper communication and coordination between all these members. That's what is missing in traditional project management. Traditional project management has a long supply chain to transfer all this information. Yes, I understand. Correct. It cannot be.
Break the whole floor and then construct it again, right?
No, the change is not about breaking whole floor. Change is about, for example, cost cutting, like removing of cashier or removing the whole building as it is. They cannot remove one floor. But even this change itself, it's going through a long process, from design to construction to authorities approval to the client approval. All this with Agile can be eliminated.
Can I just mention something here, and I think Tahal wants us to add something. For our colleagues who come from IT background, they need to realize that in construction we have a completely different life cycle, whereby the design is a project in its own. And then, well, so perhaps you can apply Agile to the design, whereby sometimes the customer doesn't know what they need, just like your case. And here the iterations and the Agile methods or methodologies, as we sometimes argue whether the right term is, can be very useful. And once the design is done, there is a tendering process, and then there is a team to do the design, we refer to another team to do the project management, and then to a third team to do the building itself. So here we need to understand that we are talking about perhaps a different ballgame.
Yeah, I think, if I may add, adopting and applying Agile in the construction industry, there are different ways of doing it. One way is to do it at each stage as a standalone. So the design stage, you do it at the design stage, and then the construction stage, you do it at the construction stage. It's very difficult if you are following, depends on the procurement system you are using as well, because we have in the construction industry also different procurement systems. If it is a traditional procurement system, then you need to do the design complete, and then the tendering stage, and then the construction stage comes after the tender stage. But also we have like the design and build procurement system. We have PPP, public-private partnership procurement system, where all these teams, they work together at the same time, since the inception to the completion and handover and commissioning. So depending on the different procurement systems, they will be different way of applying Agile in construction projects.
What is perhaps more relevant, I think, for the construction is the lean side. Because here, yeah.
And it's something you can use it. It was an old process made by Alistair Cockburn. It was the Unified process. So it was group, IBM called it a group, rational Unified process. And this one is more suitable. I think it's more suitable for construction because there are phases, design, construction, etc. And then we could do the same way in the
Although
construction.
in the traditional or the quasi-traditional, we are aware of what we call it concurrent engineering and fast tracking, which are different approaches to speed up the process. But they are fundamentally different from the Scrum and other techniques that we're talking about. So that's why, to some extent, I like what has been said here as, but you can see, and this is the main thing that we want out of this track. You can see out of these presentations that there is a completely different language, completely different tone compared to the morning session and perhaps what will happen next. Here there are people who are interested in sharing thoughts rather than sharing practices. And I think this is the role of academia to start with. And then we, obviously practitioners, I believe, should know best what suits them best, and they should be in a position, in better informed position to make decisions for themselves. Questions, please. Yes, please, sure.
Implementing Agile, as you say that it's a fixed cost with a, let's say, fixed time. I mean, a product, I'm IT background, so you need the product to be done. How do you define the scope in the end? Because before you decide how much you want to spend and how you need to spend it, you need to define the scope. So whenever you say here that you have a fixed price, fixed time, and then you define the scope, or the scope will be changed accordingly. So it's just confusing a little bit for me.
Actually, the traditional way is like when a customer comes to you and tells you, this is all the set of requirements I want. I want to develop a software with these features, this, fixed. And then you develop your project based on whatever capabilities you have in terms of cost and timing, when you can be delivered these projects. While in the Agile way, the client comes to you and tells you, I want to develop a project, and then wants these features. The Agile way allows you to change these requirements by time, because their clients might like, once you have developed the testing or the demo, then it says, oh, I don't like this thing here or this thing here. So you can't really, in the traditional, go back and change these things. While in Agile, you can go and change these things, which is the change in the scope. Because at the beginning, you are just basing yourself, you are working on the software based on the cost that he wants to pay and the time that he wants to spend, like 3 month projects for $1 million, for example, dollars. Make me a software who serves clients service, I don't know, in something.
The high level requirements is there, so the high level scope is there. Whatever you are doing is changing the scope, not defining the scope, right?
The scope by definition is like when you are setting all the requirements for whatever project is. from in terms of scope statements, like the charter and different requirements in there. But at the end, like you can't really modify it. It's not just the requirements; it's the whole project once defined. But it's not in terms of what you define or what you change. It's the whole scope. If you touch the scope, means you are changing the scope.
The question is usually, do clients always know what they want?
Yeah.
That's the big question. And by the way, this is not only in software, in interior design, in renovation project, even if you are organizing your own wedding.
Yeah.
So it can be, but I just want to remind everyone that Sara has been providing a review on the textbook,
Yeah.
and perhaps we need to ask her whether she agrees with what she's been saying or not, because that's what, well, a review, presenting a review of the textbook is something, and then your own views of the world is a different story. Right. You wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, actually, I was just saying that, like in Agile, you first have the scope breakdown. Like you have a sprint, like you will deliver after 2 weeks. First, initially, you define what you will deliver in the next 2 weeks. So you take the work.
So you have the FRS document,
Yes,
the function
yes,
requirement.
yes. First, you have the stories, you have the work which need to be done. Then the product owner, he will prioritize the work which need, like I'm creating a software. My competitor is also working on the same domain, so he'll launch in 3 months. So what I'll do, I have 10 features. I'll prioritize top 3 features and I'll create them and I'll ship them. Like I don't need to create 10 features and ship them. I'll just take the best features and I'll ship them. So
How
that's
do
the
you define the cost then? Because the cost is defined by effort. So
no, actually, see,
if
cost.
anything happens during this
Because
project,
cost is measured because your time is fixed. Like for 2 weeks, you don't change your scope. So for 2 weeks, your resources, you know how much resources. Cost is like cost will not change because the time frame, because of the time box. You have a
you didn't get my
specific time.
question.
You do it from the beginning because you've already divided it
It's a
into
fixed
sprints,
price.
and with fixed time, and the cost to some extent is.
Actually, time is fixed. So like I will ship my product in the market in next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
According to
First
the organization.
time is defined. Na? So once time is defined, then you know the cost because you know the resources associated with.
That's very clear.
This is
Moving to
part
the
of
next question, please.
I have a question from Talal.
Talal, yes.
See, we have a screen sharing software currently, right?
Yes.
You can share screens.
Yes.
Okay, both of them chatting, voice chatting. They can. How that is different than this VR? What additional we will get from this VR that we will not get with that screen sharing?
The biggest difference is this is actually more immersive in nature. So being immersive means you are actually in that environment.
No,
When
but
you're in a
when
screen
you are
sharing-
interacting through a software like Skype or video, because there are so many tools. My team is in Karachi. I'm in Dubai, so we used to share screens. We used to share videos
Yes.
through cameras. So
Yes.
like we like the need of this VR like.
Okay, so that's basically exactly one of the questions which we try to look at. I mean, is there a difference whether the people would want to use Skype, or if given a technology like this, would they want to use VR to the same kind of thing? The point is, because it's like when you're in this environment, you're sort of, especially if you take the things like what Facebook is trying, what dog head simulations are trying, it's like you are there in one place. See, here you still feel that there is a disconnect. There is this, though you're seeing the person, you're not getting the full interaction. You might just see his face. Okay? But
So
what
all
we
the
can do
people
is
need to wear the glasses and they'll be.
yes, but the ones we tested was one could wear the glass, the other could be just a normal person. But if everyone was wearing the glasses, they could get their expressions and all that kind of stuff. Those inner stuff. If you have seen, just showing some.
Okay, Talal, I'm aware of the time, so may I add something here?
Yeah.
That I think you are absolutely right. I think that in business we need to look at the value. So, but I believe that this is perhaps can be another stage in the process of evaluating this, can be done perhaps by a business student rather than an IT student. Yeah.
Once we experience this, now then we can.
Yes, of course. Yes,
You can
please.
see this interaction points. So,
Can I add something?
Yeah, but let's take it
I
from intern. Yeah.
something on this. It is interesting to have. The only problem is that we have problem after 15 minutes, and that's the problem. There are other solutions that I give on my trainings. Is you have a Sokoko. I don't know if you know. It allows you to create a virtual office, and so you put your person in the room or in the different place, so you can have communication with the people in your seat, and you talk just with the people that are in a specific room. If
Right.
you want to be private, you can private and this. And then you have tools that allow you to share your working environment. Like if you're using JetBrains, you have tools that you can see the other one coding, so you can do pair programming in remote. So there are a lot of tools. Is it interesting?
Yeah. So one more comment, please. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, VR will be helpful where, like, for example, as a product owner or as a product manager, you have to gather the requirements, and you are now not on site, and you are basically are on the remote site, and in that case, might be to be more useful, like to get the requirements, like you can understand actually more
But
better.
yeah. The thing is, we perhaps a clarification of how this will add value compared to the non-immersive tools is worth studying. But I believe that in academia, sometimes when we ask a question and we can't find an answer for it, is as useful as when you find an answer for it. Because at least you're saving time for people who will think of perhaps asking the question again. They will not, then that's a box ticked. And I think here that's the benefit of this. But again, bear in mind that we are wearing a different hat now. We're not practitioners trying to say this is a good practice. We're academics, we're trying to test and think, well, is this useful? Can it be of help or not? And that is the reason for this track, as I said. We have time for one more question, otherwise you'll be missing the tea, and I won't like to miss my coffee, please. So,
see, if I understand augmented reality well, then it is actual reality and then people inside it, right?
Yes.
Actual.
So
So that would be better than virtual reality. Don't you think people will feel more comfortable in the actual environment rather than virtual environment?
yes, that is the next phase of actually we're trying to look into that because what happens here is because you're totally secluded. If someone else really comes into your physical space, you don't really know who has come, what it is there, and stuff like that. But if you have this augmented reality screen, it might make sense, but again, there needs to be some boundaries. So we could say that, okay, if this is my screen, this part of my wall becomes the virtual part, where I've connected to virtually to different people. But here, people in this zone, so we might need to look into interior design of spaces and how these things are.
actually, we had a very interesting presentation that we missed. What was meant to be presented by one of our students, Maria. Unfortunately, she had an emergency, she couldn't attend today. It was on emotional intelligence and cultural diversity within virtual teams. So it could have really integrated very well with what Talal has been saying, because looking at the personal side together with the technology side. And I think this is part of what we would like to see as an integrated studies. But if any burning question, that's very good. You've been a wonderful floor to a wonderful presenters. Thank you very much. That was very good. Thank you.